Well, the inaugural Russia-Africa summit is being held in the city of Sochi. It hopes to increase cooperation between the country and the African continent. President Cyril Ramaphosa is leading the South African delegation. He is accompanied by International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor and Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan. The presidency says Pretoria and Moscow's bilateral ties are at an optimal level and continue to grow. He says the gathering will contribute towards the development of African countries. All right, let's get you some analysis on that gathering now. We're joined in studio by international affairs expert Dr. Charles Sinkala. Dr. Sinkala, thanks very much for coming to studio.
Thank you, Michelle.
So, the scramble for Africa as we've come to know it, is Russia... It continues, and is Russia perhaps a bit late to the party?
No, Russia's been in Africa, for many years, though they could be seen from the public perspective that they haven't been doing much. Only China is more visible because China's got a different approach. Russia has got a different also approach where they are influencing in terms of countries in the continent. We must have been, aware of Central African Republic where they are financing the atomic weapons, and they support the government. And also in Guinea, they are supporting the current president, and also they are influencing his third term, to stay in power so that they can have the diamond and gold concessions. In each and every African country where you find there's mineral rich and destabilization, Russia is still present there. In Democratic Republic of Congo, Russia is there. In South Africa now we heard about the Tu-160, also known as the blackjack, atomic strategic weapons which have been delivered today in South Africa. So Russia has been here for many years because you must remember Russia's economy, they base on atomic bomb state enterprise. And those state enterprises, they have raw materials which are residents of Africa. So Russia has been underground influencing. And though most of the deals Russia has been doing hasn't been credible deals. I can give you an example of the deal which went in Zimbabwe for the outset of Robert Mugabe. They influenced the strategic mercenary to dispose of Mugabe's regime so that they can get wind of the uranium and diamond and other minerals which are influencing their appetite.
Let me ask you this. When we think about relations between South Africa and Russia, what are the things that we need to be careful of?
One, the whole world must realize and understand that the African continent at large, it must be renamed as one of the richest resourced continent in the world. And if we rename it to be one of the richest resourced continent in the world, Africa now must take a center stage. All these Beijing conference, Russian conference, supposed to be held here. It's more expensive for the African states to travel to those nations and negotiate. And when they are negotiating...
What's stopping us from doing that?
I think it's lack of unity. We're not united. The President Cyril Ramaphosa is alone with his delegation representing South Africa. We've got another president from Nigeria representing Nigeria. And, this is co-hosted by the Egyptian president, Morsi, and he is one of the chairperson of the United Nations. And because of that lack of working together as Africans, realizing that these people actually, they need us more than we need them, Africa must create a boundary or a barrier where they have to sit fast and invite these people to bid for Africans' minerals and set the targets.
Would you say that we are still a long way from being united as an African continent?
I think there's still a sense of us moving forward to unite ourselves, but I think to a larger extent we're still a long way. The only time we realize as Africans that we've got something in Africa is when it will be too late. Because most of these concession bilateral agreements, they are called bilateral agreements. The trade between nations and nations, actually they don't happen like that. Trade, in actual fact, is a trade between the Russian people and the South African people. So, but if you talk about the trade of what is happening at the moment, are we having a fair deal? Do we have South African companies in Russia? Do we have South African companies doing business in Russia? All what we see here is the Russian people, they are coming, they supply arms and all those type of things in South Africa. So the bilateral agreement and arrangement is not a fair deal.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that do we go into these kinds of talks on the back foot, given the situation with our economy, given our lack of growth, our jobs numbers skyrocketing?
Yeah, well, I think we go into those in a desperation mode,
yeah.
And that's why these people, they take advantage. And most of these deals which are signed, business deals, trade deals, are signed with a contract of the one who's coming from outside Africa. So South Africa is not signing a document, it's a Russian document which is given to the South African government to read that document and append the signature. So they are empowered, and in most of these concessions which are doing, they're actually, in the long run, they're going to affect us. Because what is happening now, America also, they are getting interested of what is happening in South Africa. And now if Russia is supplying atomic and nuclear weapons, to South Africa, America, United States, the European Union, they will be intimidated. Already China is supplying almost $200 billion of trade. America is $300 billion. Only Russia now, though they wrote off a debt of $20 billion to Africa, but there's still no sense of harmony of African leaders uniting themselves and realizing that they must sit in the table to negotiate this and tell these foreign investments that we are in control now. How can we discuss and both of us trade and benefit? Remember, trade, what you are trading must be beneficial to me, and what I'm trading must be beneficial to you. So now, because of desperation of trying to lift the unemployment levels in Africa, we tend to give in, and we only realize afterwards that the mining concessions or mineral concessions have been sold for 100 years or 90 years. And most of our times in Africa, we work to service the debts. Most of the African continent's debts are above 50%. But this is a time for Africa to rise, that this scramble for Africa, it's alive and well, and we must set the barriers and negotiating of terms and conditions where actually the regional bodies, like I was supposed to see that the regional Southern African Development Community body was to be in the center front of leading the Southern African countries to guide them and making sure that what they are signing there, it relates to their plight and the Agenda 2063 of Southern Africa.
Absolutely. Well, thanks very much for coming into studio. Dr. Charles Sinkala, of course, giving us some analysis there with that inaugural Russia-Africa summit being held in Sochi. The President, Cyril Ramaphosa, and his delegation are there.